What is going on, everybody? Welcome back to College Football Talk with Peter Burtnett, and we are officially into preview season for college football. We are into the beginning of June, almost actually halfway through June now, so it's time to really start looking ahead to the 2024 season if we haven't already. College football preview magazines have been hitting the newsstands. And the one that I'll be using is Lindy Sports, kind of referring to that. Obviously, a lot of other research and observations, but it's if you're looking for a college football preview magazine, they are, in my opinion, the best one out there. They're the most in-depth. Their team kind of capsules or modules, whatever you want to call it, are always really well done. And I think if you want to pick up a copy to preview the upcoming season, that is the way to go. But in this first video, I'm going to be talking about a discussion point that I think is very interesting, and that is the Big 12 being kind of the Wild West. And while it is the Wild West, it is not a wasteland, but I'll get into that more in this video. Before I do, if you go on to enjoy this video, please feel free to leave a like, consider subscribing to the channel, and turn on those post notifications so you're always up to date whenever I post. But let's get into it. The Big 12, why are they the Wild West? The obvious answer is they're in the western half of the country. Geographically, they're in what used to be known as the Wild West. But another thing too is they have their two biggest programs, the two programs that really carried kind of throughout the whole existence of the conference in its form up to this coming season. Oklahoma and Texas, both of those schools go to the SEC. While they hadn't always won the conference, they were the two premier powers for the last 30 years, probably, something like that, and were obviously big parts of the old Big XII and Southwest Conference as well. So those two teams moving on kind of leaves things wide open, and that's another thing why I think it's the Wild West, is because it's really available for the taking for anybody. The popular, the common, probably the right choice is Oklahoma State. They're the team that lost to Texas in last year's Big 12 championship game. But I think a couple of newcomers have a chance as well. Utah is the one that I think has the best chance to become the first Big 12 champion without Oklahoma or Texas being in the conference. There are other teams as well. I think Arizona certainly has plenty of talent, even losing head coach Jedd Fisch. But I do think they're in a little bit of precarious territory. I think it is highly likely that the Big 12 gets just one team into the college football playoff, and that only being because they have an automatic bid as one of the top 5 conferences in college football. Obviously, an automatic bid goes to the conference champion in the ACC, the Big X, the Big 12, and the SEC, and then the highest ranking group of 5 conference champion. So you have 5 automatic bids, but I also think outside of those 5 auto bids, a lot are going to be filled up by other teams. You look at out of 4 teams really in the Big Ten, one of these teams, Ohio State, Oregon, Michigan, or Penn State, is going to be the champion. Then you have 3 teams right there that are getting in. In the SEC, you got Georgia, Ole Miss, Alabama, potentially Mizzou, Texas. All those 5 teams really are competing, and then the other 3 or 4 are highly likely again in as well. So you have 2 spots for auto bids, and then another probably 6 or 7, maybe even 8 bids at large bids from just those 2 conferences. So that's 10 spots filled already. I guess it would have to be, it couldn't be not more than 9. So it's 9 spots filled automatically. And then the other 3 spots go to the ACC champion, which is likely to be Florida State, unless Clemson can make a surprise this year, get back to their form that got them a couple national championships. And then the winner of the Big 12, and of course then the group of 5 highest ranked champion, which a lot of people are favoring to be Liberty this year. So I think the Big 12 is in a situation where you win this conference, of course you're going to be in the college football playoff, but if you don't, you're on a little bit kind of shaky ground. It's possible, obviously, if a team like a Utah or like an Oklahoma State has just 1 loss in the regular season and maybe loses, or maybe he's undefeated before the conference championship game and then just loses that game. But I really expect this to be a little bit like what the Pac-12 was, where the teams all kind of beat up on each other. Everybody ends up with at least 2 losses, a lot of teams with 3, 4 losses. I can see that happening, and not only because you have 4 teams coming over from the Pac-12, but I just think it's a highly competitive conference, especially this year. It'll be entertaining to watch, but it could put these schools into a tough position where you might have a great season, but unlike the Big Ten and the SEC, there's not as much separation between the top and kind of the middle of the conference. I think in the Big Ten and SEC, you have the teams that I mentioned, and even teams like Georgia, Ohio State, Oregon, and Michigan, and I guess Texas along with Georgia and the SEC. Those teams are all kind of quite a bit above the rest of the pile. Alabama and Ole Miss are kind of right there as well. I don't expect Alabama to fall off a cliff this year, but I think they're going to be kind of in that range of just getting into the playoff. And kind of in this case, it's an example that Oklahoma State does kind of top the pile here, but you have Utah, Kansas State, Arizona, Iowa State, West Virginia, Colorado, and the list goes on. All those teams, I think, are in pretty serious contention. I could see this year Oklahoma State and Utah both emerging as that top team in this conference, but I think there's a lot of wiggle room where one of those teams might emerge and then the other one kind of gets taken down in the crowd with the rest of the conference, and then you're left with the one team that gets in and everybody else kind of left on the outside looking in. I think the quality of other conferences, and this isn't to speak down on the Big 12 at all, but I think the quality of other conferences might limit the Big 12 because of those teams that I named early on in this video being kind of upper echelon and being in that top 10 already coming into the season, whereas these teams in the Big 12 are going to have to win and prove it to get there. These other teams that I mentioned have a chance where they could probably drop a game, probably even 2, and still be in that top position. I didn't even mention a Notre Dame is another team that could keep potentially a second Big 12 team out of the playoff. However, this is not a death note, I guess, for the Big 12. The Big 12 might be the Wild West, but they are not a wasteland. They have a plethora of talent out there. I mean, it starts with, obviously, Colorado. They might not be the best team in the conference, but I think they're going to take some steps. I think an 8-4 season, maybe even 9-3, is certainly within the realm of possibility. And that's because they have a couple of guys like quarterback Shedeur Sanders and the all-purpose cornerback wide receiver Travis Hunter. Both of those guys are going to be top 5 probably NFL draft selections next April. Certainly Shedeur Sanders probably will end up top 10 if he drops a little bit. And then at Oklahoma State, the team that again is kind of the favorite to win the conference this year, they have Ollie Gordon II, probably the best running back in all of college football, just like Hunter is probably the best all-purpose player and the best cornerback. I think Ollie Gordon II is the best running back. Utah quarterback Cam Rising will be looking to recover from injuries last year, but he is one of the top quarterbacks. And another one of the top quarterbacks then is Arizona's Noah Fifita, who had a really good season, and he's paired up with potentially this year with some of the stellar receivers from last year like Marvin Harrison Jr., Malik Neighbors, Rome Odunze, guys like that gone. Totoira McMillan could very well be the best wide receiver, not only in the Big 12, but in college football this season. So you have 2 guys down in Tucson who are among the best players in the country as well. And then a couple of guys from Kansas, Devin Neal, running back, and cornerback Kobe Bryant. And those are just some of the names. You have a guy from West Virginia who's one of the top linemen probably in this upcoming NFL draft, and that's just to name a few of the guys. So again, I think while the teams might be kind of on the outside looking in, I think this is very much like what the Pac-12 was. And I do think the Big 12 is in a slightly better position than the ACC because I see a little bit more star power outside of those top teams like Florida State and Clemson. You kind of get outside of Florida State and Clemson, and unless you're really diving into those players, there's not a lot of stars in the ACC. I think there's a lot of star power here in the Big 12. I think they're going to be the most entertaining conference to watch this season. And I hope that, you have 2 teams, whether it's Oklahoma State and Utah, whether it's Colorado getting in there, whether it's one of the Kansas schools. Whatever the case is, I think you have a chance, and I'm hoping for 2 really good teams to emerge from this conference and for a couple of Big 12 teams to get into the college football playoff. But that's it for this quick rundown of the Big 12. Going to have a lot of content coming out here in the near future as I dive into that preview magazine, start looking at all that these teams have going on, keeping up to date with transfers and everything because that's constantly moving. But comment your thoughts below on what you think of the Big 12, what you think their chances are to get more than one team into the new 12-team college football playoff. Let me know maybe who some players are that I missed that you expect to either be absolute studs, or maybe that you expect to have kind of a breakout season if maybe they weren't as notable last year. But that is all for this episode of College Football Talk with Peter Burnett. I'm your host, signing out. Peace.